Today is another Watercooler Wednesday where we're going to be speaking about something that's very topical. This was just, I think, launched on the 7th of March. So about 20 days ago, this new legal entity was created in Wyoming called the DUNA. So back at CTAC, back in middle of February, we had a discussion by the very knowledgeable Jason Schwartz on this idea that we have these DAOs, right? We have DAOs that have it's a decentralized autonomous organization that is kind of out there in the market, but doesn't really have a firm, I guess, a firm locational like standing, right? So we have these entities that are like in the gray area. And so there had been some moves to create like an LLC type for DAOs. I think it was called an LLD out of Utah, but it didn't provide a lot of additional clarity. And so there's been this kind of concern for DAOs that they could be looked through as essentially partnerships, right? With an absence of a legal framework, they are essentially, or they could be argued to be partnerships in a way. And the same goes for smart contracts in general. They could be kind of slapped with this partnership label, which would effectively kill a lot of these organizations because it kind of goes against the ethos of Web3 in that people want to be able to maintain their privacy if they so choose. They want to be able to interact with these different protocols and maybe jump in a governance role, via a governance token, but then exit when they would like to as well. And they don't really want to be tied necessarily to the potential legal fallout of some of these platforms. I can give an example of Uniswap. If you're a governance token holder of Uniswap and you help vote on new proposals for that decentralized exchange, and that decentralized exchange gets hacked, and some users get or the smart contracts get exploited to the tune of millions of dollars, which happens a lot in DeFi, where someone finds an exploit in a smart contract and they drain the funds from that. In those types of events, there's a chance that if this is labeled as a partnership, you could be personally liable for this by just holding a Uni token, right? Just holding or purchasing this Uniswap token could put you at risk of getting slapped with some of these kind of unfortunate events that aren't really in your control. So the goal with the DUNA was to kind of help provide additional clarity for these types of organizations so that they can operate in a way that they have, they know more what the rules they are playing by are, right? So the way that you can think of a DUNA is essentially, it can be applied to things in blockchain that are related to the infrastructure layer. And so what I mean by that is like a decentralized exchange is a really good example of that. If you have DAOs that govern projects as a whole, that's the infrastructure of that project, right? Not the business aspect of that project. If you have a Web3 project that creates a token but has its own business related to it, that's going to be governed by, it's going to form a real business entity like an S corp, a C corp, or whatever jurisdiction they choose. But it's on top of that initial infrastructure layer. And so DUNA really only applies to DAOs that are acting as that infrastructure layer for the blockchain, right? So a good example is like decentralized social media or decentralized exchanges, like I mentioned before. Those types of items that don't have a clear management structure, right? Because it's a decentralized aspect. So just kind of some background on this. This passed on March 7th, and it will be effective July 1st, 2024. And at any point, guys, if you want to jump in, ask questions, or provide some insight on this, please stop me at any point. I'm not going to be offended by that. So, and as we mentioned before, the goal of this new legal framework is to reduce the uncertainty from a regulatory and tax perspective for these different DAOs. And so the DUNA stands for a decentralized, unincorporated nonprofit association. And this name is kind of funny because these these entities can elect to be taxed as C corps. So it's a decentralized unincorporated, but then under this new bill, you could elect to be taxed as a corporation. So with the 21% tax on that as well. So
it only accomplishes its goal if it's a corporation, right? Because otherwise you're still in partnership mode.
Right, exactly. And so some critics of this might say, okay, well previously DAOs didn't have any like formal tax obligations, officially, and now you're kind of slapping a 21% tax on this. But what that 21% buys you is the certainty of knowing how you're going to be operated. You can go out and get an EIN, so you can open a bank account. We'll get into the other kind of protections that this will provide, and the kind of uncertainty that this removes as well. But yes, you're introducing a new tax that wasn't previously like formally tagged to these entities, but you're removing the uncertainty of being potentially labeled as a partnership. And then, how do you divide up what that entity has? How do you flow through all the revenue from a DAO to those individual partners, and are those partners liable? And so it's helping to create more certainty around this. So and another key thing here is the jurisdictional piece, right? We'll go into more detail on that in a moment. Anyone have anything to add to this so far, or any questions?
There's one thing about it rolling out in the middle of 2024 is I wonder how it's going to coincide with BOI reporting. Because if you form a new entity, you got 30 days to, gather all your info for BOI, which kind of defeats the purpose of the anonymity that you get from being a shareholder in the corporation as opposed to getting the K1 pass through. So
for those who are unfamiliar with that, so this beneficial ownership, so basically it's a new requirement that's coming into play that requires you to kind of list who are the owners of a corporation or LLC.
Yeah. So FinCEN wants to know who the beneficial owners are of most small businesses. I think under 5 million revenue is where they're at. You've got, if it's a newly formed entity, you have 30 days to comply. So you'd have to give information on owners, like actually copies of their licenses, for example. They want to see, if there's foreign money coming to the US, and there's a $500 a day fine for non-compliance, which caps out at 10,000. So within 30 days of forming this thing, you've got to get BOI compliant, or every entity is going to have to be compliant starting in 2025 unless anything changes.
So we still have uncertainty around whether this would apply to this type of entity type. And so the DUNA so the DUNA came kind of based off of the UNA. I'm not really sure exactly how to pronounce that, but an unincorporated nonprofit association. And so this is just like the decentralized kind of version of this that applies to DAOs, right? So the UNA entity type was already in existence in Wyoming. And so this is kind of like an expansion on that. So it allows governance of digital communities without compromising decentralization. You can pay people reasonable compensation in these organizations for the work they do on the governance side. So if someone is helping with the administrative work to kind of maintain the DUNA, they could get compensated for that as long as it's reasonable. We won't get into like what constitutes reasonable compensation here, but it provides for that. So you can get paid, so you could get potentially W-2 earnings from that. And it provides, the same legal entity protections that you would get without being a traditional business. So whether that's limitation of liability, whether that's, being able to go out and get a bank account, because it's a huge challenge for DAOs to be able to get a bank account, because in most jurisdictions, you need to have some sort of nexus there, right? And so having an EIN in the US, which may not necessarily be the most friendly regulatory environment in the world for crypto, at least the framework of the legal system and the rules that you will be playing by. Maybe not all the rules, but you know kind of the legal system within which you're playing. And a key thing about this that was a risk for DAOs previously was that because DAOs didn't have any jurisdiction that they were tied to, that left them open to attacks from any jurisdiction. So if you're looking to take a DAO to court, previously without the DUNA, you could basically choose whichever jurisdiction was going to be most favorable to you and find a way to litigate it from that jurisdiction, because they don't have a physical jurisdiction. So this provides clarity on that front as well. So the consumer facing applications will remain as, LLCs or other business types. But this is just talking about the infrastructure layer, the governance aspect of like the DAO itself, right? So we already talked about the legal existence, contracting, court appearances, and tax payment challenges for DAOs that this helps solve. So the biggest thing I think here is that it kind of helps with the legal clarity related to the risk of being labeled as a partnership, which would effectively kill the formation of DAOs if that was kind of a widespread practice, because basically what that means is that everything is passing through whatever the activities of that DAO is passes through the individual members. And with a lot of those members wanting to remain anonymous, it would make it almost impossible to properly report. But also it makes it a very unattractive vehicle if that's the way it's going to be treated, just because it's completely against the ethos of Web3. We talked about being able to be treated as corporations for tax purposes. And it also maintains the privacy, right? Because the corporation itself, well, I mean, it's unincorporated, but the DUNA is filing as a corporation at the federal level. It ensures the member privacy. Now, again, Brian brought up the point of the beneficial ownership reporting that may complicate this. So that we haven't kind of seen play out yet, but in theory, this would help maintain the privacy of the members or the token holders that are involved in the governance. And then we talked about reasonable compensation. So those who are participating and doing work for the DAO, they can be reasonably compensated as part of this as well. Another kind of confusing aspect of this is that it's labeled as it's labeled as a decentralized, unincorporated, nonprofit association. However, it can participate in for-profit activities, and so there's some limitations on that. But it's a catchy name with a lot of kind of irony woven into it, just based on how it looks in reality. So we talked about compensation. It avoids the liabilities associated with general partnerships. It can be treated as a corporation for tax purposes. So you'd have that 21% tax. And Wyoming, I believe, does not have a state tax. So you'd be looking at a 21% tax rate on the entire operation, which isn't the best, but it's also not the worst. So it's providing more clarity, and it's providing a benefit from that standpoint. And then again, we talked about the member privacy, but the tax liabilities are at the entity level and not at a pass-through level. So we talked about the ability to acquire an EIN and open bank accounts. We talked about meeting the IRS information reporting requirements without exposing member identities, and then the privacy aspect here. So securities aspect. So a question arises as to whether this would pass the Howey test, and effectively there's not the third aspect of it, which is of the Howey test, which is, is there a reasonable expectation of profit from the managerial efforts of others? That's not in existence in a DAO, right? And so this doesn't satisfy that aspect. And also, if you look at common enterprise, if it's a truly decentralized organization, it does not have common enterprise, just from the nature of decentralization, right? You don't have like a company or a foundation that you can tie those activities to that would satisfy that aspect of this. And it helps to strengthen the arguments against DAOs being subjected to securities laws. So provides a little bit more clarity from that realm. So again, this is very new. It's a new entity type that is kind of still being vetted. It doesn't go into effect until July 1st, 2024. However, it seems like an extremely effective way to provide clarity to DAOs while also generating some tax revenue, getting them a jurisdictional clarity as to where are they operating, where would you take them to court, and providing for inclusion for people who want to maintain their privacy as well without kind of complicating things. So these discussions are supposed to be open forum. I wanted to just give a kind of quick overview on this stuff and then open it up for questions or discussions. Do you think that this is a good step forward for DAOs? Do you think it's going to help with that clarity here, or do you think it's going to continue to complicate things or create more questions than answers? Love to hear from anyone who has any insights on this.
Definitely seems to give someone US based a jurisdiction to start from, you know.
Yeah, totally. I think Adila has something to say.
I just wanted to say this is a great overview and much needed, because I think the landscape is getting ready to change now that we're in this blockchain crypto bull run, and more of those DAOs are coming to surface because they're tied to different communities and you know, different uses for some of these DAOs. From what I'm hearing, even for fundraising, for legal cases, and different things of that nature. I did a white paper on this back March 9th when I heard the news that happened in Wyoming, just to kind of give an overview of what it looks like from a regulatory standpoint. Something that I noticed that might be key as well is, you know, the taxation. I think it's very much key how people are going to be taxed on these DAOs, especially if you have communities that are generating money on the chain. You know, it'll be a purposeful way for it to be properly taxed so that people can get paid on it, or like you were saying, issue payrolls, or those that are holding the tokens, they'll be able to initially have a value of the asset tied to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that looking at the DEX, like the Uniswap DEX as a kind of foundational example of this, you know, the protocol itself generates revenue. And so, which is, some of it is used for the foundation and some of it goes to the LP, the people who are providing liquidity to the different pools. But this provides a way for them to pay taxes on that and have more certainty around it, right? And so I think it's really key and a good step forward. I think we need different options for different DAOs as well, because you know, it's hard to say based on this just came out, but I'm guessing that there's going to be intricacies that this misses that may be solved by a slightly different entity type. But I think it's important to start to see these different states come up with solutions that are potential solutions to the problem that will be vetted in real use, right? So I don't know if this is the silver bullet to kind of giving DAOs that clarity, but it seems to be providing a lot of additional clarity here. So got some questions in the chat. Oh,
Just me putting Adela's white paper in there.
Cool.
What was cool for me, you know, obviously I just learned about this yesterday, honestly, through our conversation with Kevin, but I was just doing some research, and it's like, I'd love to know what's going on in Wyoming, because they're getting things done. You know, I did some research. They had the UNA, and then that's where the LLC was actually originated, which I didn't know as well. So they seem to be some real movers and shakers out there in Wyoming. And I'm wondering, aside from this conversation, what happens? Does that start to become like a hub, at least here in the US, you know, for more things blockchain, crypto, Web3 related? And I'm planning to look into like the government officials and those that are like working on these projects, because, you know, I'd love to learn more about what's happening out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Delaware DAOs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, the Delaware DAOs. It
Yep.
seems like that they're really taking a step forward to put their name. I mean, aside from Buffalo, what do you really know Wyoming for? So
Right.
it seems like they're trying to etch their name into
Yeah.
this crypto space and this DUNA space.
Yeah. And I think that the state itself has been known for like privacy protection, with regards to how they form different entities as well. So, I think that speaks to it. You do have Jackson Hole out there, so you do have a lot of money in parts of Wyoming. So maybe that has something to do with it. But yeah, I think we'll see. It's good to follow, and it could be good to connect with whatever block. There's obviously some smart people involved in this legislation because they understand the problems that they need to solve, and they're coming up with very thoughtful solutions. So could be good to connect with people from whatever blockchain association they have that's helping to push this stuff through because it's well thought out. It seems.
Dick Cheney pulling the strings.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Again, I know that it's going to happen at the state level. I'm just interested of the rest of the states. How is everybody else going to start adapting? Are we going to be looking at some federal level? What is this kind of like the test pool? Are we going to be looking at some more federal regulations to come to pass to help the IRS and different regulatory entities, come to grips with some of this new technology and how they're going to be taxing on it?
I would love to say yes, but then Congress is involved, so we all know how things go with that. So I think that they should be stepping up to help us with more clarity with regards to securities and things like that. And I don't think the SEC should be taking things as far as they have been with kind of trying to tag ETH as a security. It looks like Kevin posted an article here about how New Hampshire is proposing some new stuff here. So there's a new proposed law from, it looks like yesterday, that would grant legal personhood and limited liability for participants of decentralized and autonomous organizations. So this is the first I'm seeing this. Thank you, Austin. Thank you, Kevin, for bringing this to our attention. I haven't had a chance to read through it yet, but it seems like I'm definitely going to take this as some lunchtime reading material to get to the bottom of it. But that would make sense to me that New Hampshire would come out with something as well, because we got the live free or die mentality up there. They want their they want to protect privacy and things like that up in New Hampshire. So cool stuff, food for thought.
Public New Hampshire DAO registry.
Yeah, it's worth a read. I just read through it yesterday after our conversation. It seems like it has a lot of similarities. This one is still in the proposal phase. It just passed through the House within New Hampshire, and it's in the Senate at this point. So it's looking forward a little bit. But there's this registry, Brian, that you mentioned. Based on my reading of just this article, it seemed like that registry of DAOs that are going to comply with this New Hampshire structure would actually be on chain, which I think is really interesting. An on chain registry of DAOs. I think that was my interpretation. I haven't read the bill, of course, but that could be really interesting if it is.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, the ethos of blockchain, we want to have it be transparent. So rather than having it be in the state system of registered DAOs, having it be publicly viewable, that would be very cool. I'm excited to dive more into this to read what it says. Cool. So yeah, I think that we're moving in the right direction, right? We need more clarity on these fronts for people to want to be able to participate in them, right? If people are scared of being maybe coming under fire in the event of a smart contract getting exploited or whatever, and that prevents them from investing in some of these projects that are providing real value, right? The fact that we have, it's sometimes we get jaded by being in this industry for longer, but like the fact that you can have a decentralized exchange where you don't need permission to use it, you don't need to provide KYC, and you can instantly transact without the need for a formal order book is insane. And the fact that you can go onto a decentralized platform like Aave and borrow without any credit check, you know, obviously you have to have collateral to back that, but like it limits the possibility for discrimination or like because you're looking at the facts that you can see on chain, which doesn't have to do with the person behind the keyboard, right? And so these types of advancements are really, really key, I think, for us moving forward. But without that clarity, it's really hard for people to participate. And I think that, you know, tagging DAOs as a partnership, or even we've talked about the potential for smart contracts to be considered a partnership in certain ways. There's arguments on that front. And so these types of movements are really key to see. And I'm glad that we're starting to see more progress on this front, because there was a lot of uncertainty, and it makes our jobs as accounting and tax professionals really hard, because when people come to us with problems, we don't really have good answers for them. You know, well, your activity, you know, oh, you hold the Uni token. Well, you could potentially be a partner in Uniswap, you know, based off of holding that token. And there's a lot of like really negative things that could be tied to that. So, you know, yeah, I think it just provides more certainty here, as I said before. So,
Love it.
I was
Feels
going
like-
to say at the investment level, you know, because you hear a lot about people who invest and, you know, put money into different DAOs and they lose it. Do you think this may, I guess with tracking and traceability, this might be able to help them if they're registered, get or recover some of their monies, or be able to try them in the court, perhaps?
Wondering too, Taylor, I think his laptop just died, but when he jumps back on, maybe Brian has an answer, because it's way over my head. But how does this work now on like an international level, you know, with the DUNAs as opposed to a DAO? Like, is there any, like, what is the implications there? Does that open more doors, or does it close doors as far as like tax and accounting and being able to work with entities in different countries? You know, is there any impact there, or? I'm not sure.
US tax jurisdiction.
Basically, yeah, okay. So, I mean, with my very limited research already, I mean, I think overall it seems like a good thing. You know, I think I can say that.
Oh, yeah.
I definitely think it's a good thing in the right mode. So, all right, great. So we did post the presentation, although it's a short one. It is in the community. Taylor's back. I don't know if there was any final questions or anything that anybody wanted to add. We'll continue to update and keep everybody abreast to any information that we find out as this continues to progress. Maybe we can get somebody from Wyoming on a future call to give us more clarity.
yeah, and or someone that was involved in the New Hampshire proposal as well, because that would be cool to hear from either of those states. Yeah, I'm going to do some more research on my end to find out the people that are behind these bills, because it's good stuff. It's like it's stepping us in the right direction. Sorry about that. My laptop was plugged in, but it was not plugged into the wall, so I died there for a moment. But we're back. Cool, guys. Well, if anyone doesn't have any additional thoughts or comments, this presentation that we did will be in the community. We can upload that as a resource so that those of you who want to look through it can look through that as well. And yeah, if anyone has any topics that they want to specifically cover in any of these Watercooler Wednesday discussions, we're open for suggestions. We'll keep coming up with ideas if not, but just reach out to us if you want to learn more about a specific topic.